This
The
wasn't the
jealous
agreement.
Mafia boss
You assured
signed the
me the transfer
divorce,
was immediate.
but in the
No,
parking lot
listen,
he
this
saw her
complicates
kissing
everything. I'll
another
call you
man.
back.
The night air smelled of rain and ash, carrying the faint echoes of secrets whispered in dark corners. At the heart of this city, a palace of obsidian and iron rose like a jagged crown against the moon. Within its walls, power breathed like a living thing, demanding respect, loyalty, and fear. Lord Kalen, the ruler of this shadowed kingdom, moved through the halls with a quiet command. His black coat brushed the floor as he walked, and the soft clang of his boots echoed like a heartbeat against stone. Tonight, the air was heavier than usual. There was a silence that even the wind dared not disturb, as though the city itself waited for some inevitable turn of fate. Kalen carried a parchment in his hand, the weight of it pressing down on him more than its paper should. It was the divorce paper, the final word of separation between him and Serenia. He had signed it just moments ago, yet the ink had barely dried on his hand before doubt and longing clawed at his chest. Serenia. Even saying her name aloud in the mind was like summoning a storm. She was beautiful not in the way of simple faces, but in a way that demanded attention, whispered danger, and drew hearts into her orbit. The kind of beauty that made men forget themselves. The kind of presence that made kings and criminals alike kneel in awe or fear. The divorce was supposed to be freedom. He had told himself that. They had both told themselves that. And yet, as Kalen stepped into the cold night, the city's shadows stretching around him like long fingers, he felt no relief, only a hollow ache that no power could fill. He reached the parking lot, a barren stretch of stone lit by a single flickering lantern. And there she was, Serenia, standing close to another man. The sight stabbed him sharper than any blade. The man was tall, kind-eyed, and somehow ordinary in the world of shadows. And yet for Kalen the moment froze like crystal in time. Serenia's lips brushed against his, soft and fleeting. Kalen's chest tightened. Anger, fear, longing, and something darker, the edge of jealousy, swirled inside him, a storm he had not expected. This was not just a kiss. It was a challenge, a spark thrown across the chasm that had opened between them. But beneath the anger was something far stranger. A subtle pull, almost like magic, tugged at his soul. He felt the remnants of the bond they had shared, the curse that tied them together in ways neither could fully understand. He stepped forward, but the shadows around him seemed to pulse, responding to his emotions. A flicker of dark energy danced across the asphalt at his feet, warning him to stay. He clenched his fists, struggling to calm the storm raging inside him. Kalen had faced armies, assassins, and monsters born of old magic, but nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing could have prepared him for the ache of watching her with another. Serenia pulled back from the man, her eyes scanning the lot as if she had sensed him. For a heartbeat, their gazes met. And in that gaze was a mixture of fear, guilt, and something unspoken, something neither word nor gesture could capture. She had always been able to see him in ways others could not, and in that instant, Kalen realized just how much of himself he had left in her care. He swallowed, trying to steady the trembling in his hands. "Serenia," he said, his voice low, a growl that carried both warning and longing. The man beside her straightened, sensing the shift in the air, but Kalen ignored him. His eyes never left hers. "Kalen," Serenia whispered, a hint of something unreadable in her tone. Fear, regret, or was it longing buried deep beneath layers of pride and independence? Kalen could not tell. And that uncertainty, that impossibility of reading her fully made the ache in his chest deepen. The man took a step forward, but Kalen raised his hand. Shadows coiled around him like serpents at his command, forming a silent wall that froze the man in place. The man stopped, eyes wide as if the air itself had become too heavy to move through. Kalen did not move. His attention remained entirely on Serenia, who now took a step back as if even her courage could not meet the storm in his gaze. "I signed the papers," Kalen said, his voice steady now, but the words rang hollow in the cool night air. "It's over. It should be over. Serenia's lips parted, but no sound came. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Kaelin noticed everything: the way her hair caught the lantern light, the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes seemed to plead for something she dared not say aloud. And then the wind shifted, carrying with it a whisper that no one else could hear. It was the curse, subtle and persistent, threading through the air like a living thing. It reminded them both that they were bound in ways neither could escape completely. Magic older than the city itself had entwined their fates, and no signature, no paper, no declaration of independence could sever it entirely. Kaelin stepped closer, the shadows around him responding to his anger and longing. He could feel the pull, like invisible threads tightening between them, tugging at his chest, pulling him toward her. And he knew, with a certainty that made his heart ache, that she could feel it too. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice quieter now, almost vulnerable. With him, Serenia swallowed, her throat moving as if she were about to speak, then shook her head. Her voice faltered. "I did." Kaelin shook his head, cutting her off gently but firmly. "No. You don't need to explain." The words were a lie. He did need her explanation, but part of him feared the truth more than he feared the shadows themselves. A distant bell tolled somewhere in the city, and the sound seemed to echo inside the parking lot, bouncing off the walls of Kaelin's heart. He felt his powers stir, subtle and dangerous, as if the city itself recognized the tension between them. The curse reacted, a faint glow beneath his skin, urging him to act, to claim, to bind, but he resisted. He did not know whether he could or should. Serenia finally met his gaze fully. "Kaelin, I—" But before she could finish, a sudden wind tore through the parking lot, scattering leaves and papers like restless spirits. The lantern flickered violently, casting the lot into alternating shadows and light. In that moment, Kaelin saw not just her but the man beside her, and he realized the danger. It wasn't just jealousy he felt. Something darker stirred in the night, drawn by their bond, drawn by the intensity of their emotions. The man's hand moved toward her shoulder, and Kaelin's power surged involuntarily. Shadows shot forward like black lightning, stopping the hand midair. The man yelped, stumbling backward, and Kaelin felt the familiar thrill of command and fear. But he did not smile. His eyes never left Serenia's. "Stay away from her," he said softly, the shadows dissipating almost reluctantly. "Not because she belongs to me, but because I cannot let anything break what we are, even if we do not know it yet." Serenia's lips trembled, her hands clenching at her sides. "Kaelin, I—" But the sound of the city intruding, the distant call of a bell, the scraping of a carriage wheel against stone, the soft hiss of shadows retreating, reminded them both that the world would not pause for them. That the night held dangers far beyond human jealousy or longing. Kaelin turned slowly, his black coat sweeping behind him like smoke. "Go," he said to the man, who fled into the dark streets without a backward glance. Then he looked back at Serenia, his eyes softening for just a moment. "I will see you again," he said, a promise and a warning intertwined. Serenia nodded, though her own heart was heavy. The distance between them felt infinite, yet the pull of the unseen threads that bound them was undeniable. She turned and walked into the shadows of the city, leaving Kaelin standing alone in the flickering light. He exhaled slowly, the night air tasting of ash and rain. His hand brushed against the parchment in his coat pocket, the divorce papers. He had signed them. Yet somehow the act felt meaningless, irrelevant against the gravity of what had just happened. Kaelin's gaze lifted to the moon, pale and watchful above the city. Somewhere far beyond the immediate danger he felt it, the curse stirring, sensing the unresolved tension between them. It was patient, ancient, and relentless. And so was he. Tonight nothing was over. Not the bond, not the longing, not the storm that raged between them. And Kaelin knew, with the certainty of one who has faced death itself, that this was only the beginning. The shadows whispered his name, and he answered, not with words but with a heartbeat that echoed through the city like a warning. We are not done. Not yet. The city never slept, though it often whispered as if it were alive. Its streets, slick with rain and shadow, wound like veins through towers of black stone. In the heart of the city, Lord Kalen moved with the silent certainty of a predator, his coat trailing behind him, absorbing the dim light of lanterns. Though he had signed the divorce, the weight of the papers pressed on him like a curse heavier than ink and parchment. The night had changed him, not outwardly, but in the way a shadow shifts quietly at the edge of vision. His heartbeat still raced at the thought of Serenia, and the vision of her lips on another man haunted him with a cruel clarity. He had banished the man into the night, yet the image remained, sharper than any blade he had wielded in his underworld battles. Kalen entered the hall of his palace, a room lined with black obsidian walls and the statues of long-dead kings who had ruled with iron and fire. Shadows pooled in the corners, stretching and recoiling at his presence. He closed the door behind him, and the city outside became a distant hum, as though it had no power here within these walls. He sat in a chair of dark wood, carved with intricate symbols of protection and binding. His hands, still trembling, traced the lines of the divorce papers. The act of signing had been final, yes, but meaningless. How could he sever what had been bound by more than love, more than promises? Something old and relentless had tied him and Serenia together, a force that no law or human word could undo. Kalen's thoughts drifted to the man she had kissed. Ordinary, gentle, unaware of the dangers of Kalen's world. He had seemed harmless, almost painfully naive, yet Kalen could feel the threads of fate tugging through him, as if the man were a key in the story Kalen did not yet understand. And then there was Serenia, standing between them, radiant and unreachable, yet tied to him in ways neither could fully comprehend. He rose and moved to the balcony that overlooked the city. Rain misted the glass, blurring the world into a silver haze. Kalen breathed deeply, letting the scent of wet stone and smoke fill his lungs. Somewhere far below, shadows moved through the streets, whispers and rumors carried by those who survived in the hidden underworld. None of it mattered, not the men, not the streets, not the city itself. Only she mattered, only Serenia. A sudden chill ran down his spine and Kalen knew immediately the curse was stirring. He felt it as a pulse in the air, a vibration through his bones. The ancient magic that had entwined their fates was awakening, responding to the tension, the jealousy, and the lingering longing between them. It was patient, yes, but it was also hungry, and it demanded resolution. Kalen closed his eyes, letting the energy swirl around him. It whispered secrets he could not understand, murmured warnings he could barely decipher. The city had always been alive, but tonight it felt as though the very walls of his palace listened and waited. And the thought of Serenia, out there somewhere in the dark, unsettled him like nothing else ever could. He knew he could not ignore her. Not now, not ever. And yet the thought of confronting her made his chest ache with a strange mixture of desire and fear. He was a master of power, a man feared and obeyed by all who dwelled in the shadows, but against her he was powerless. Against her he was human. A knock at the door broke his reverie. One of his trusted aides, a silent shadow named Vale, stepped into the room, his eyes respectful but alert. "My lord," he said, his voice low, "there are rumors in the streets. People are speaking of a woman, of a man who walks beside her, of a tie neither can escape. They speak of fate, of magic, of a bond that will not break." Kalen's jaw tightened. He had expected as much. "Do you know where she is?" he asked, voice calm, though the shadows in the room deepened with his tension. Vale shook his head. "No, my lord. Only that she is moving through the city unseen, avoiding those who would seek her harm. And yet she draws attention." Kalen rose, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The shadows of the room seemed to bend toward him, coiling like serpents at his command. "Then we follow," he said, voice sharp as steel, "and we find her." He left the palace, moving through the city with a silence that made the streets themselves seem to part for him. Rain soaked his coat, but he felt nothing but the pull of the unseen threads that led to her. Each step was precise, careful, yet every moment brought him closer to her, and the pulse of the curse grew stronger, wrapping around his heart like chains of smoke. Meanwhile, Serenia moved through the streets with careful grace. She felt it too, the pull, the invisible tug that had haunted her since the kiss. She did not know how to fight it, nor did she entirely want to. Part of her feared it, yes, but another part longed for it, longed for the connection she could not sever. She kept her eyes on the shadows, sensing Kalen's presence even before she saw him. Their paths crossed in an abandoned plaza, a place where stone statues of forgotten queens and kings wept silent tears of moss and rain. Neither spoke at first. They stood apart, two figures drawn together by forces older than either could name. The city around them held its breath, the night quiet, waiting. Kalen's voice broke the silence. "You cannot hide from me," he said softly, but the words carried an edge sharp enough to cut stone. Serenia's heart trembled, but she raised her chin, meeting his gaze with courage she did not entirely feel. "I am not hiding," she said, voice steady. "I am walking my path as I always have." "And yet," he said, stepping closer, "our paths are not separate, are they? Fate, or the curse, or whatever binds us, keeps pulling us together, even when we wish it were otherwise." Her eyes flickered with emotion, a storm of guilt and longing and fear. She stopped, uncertain, aware of the power radiating from him like heat from fire. She wanted to speak, to tell him that it was not his fault, that she had never stopped caring, but the words died on her lips. Kalen reached out but did not touch her. His hand hovered in the air, trembling slightly, and the shadows around them reacted, coiling and twisting as if they too felt the tension between them. "You do not understand," he said, voice low. "I am not asking for obedience. I am not asking for anything. Only this, that you know I cannot walk away. That no matter the papers, no matter the distance, I cannot let go of what binds us." The wind stirred, carrying with it the faint scent of rain and old magic. It whispered secrets, murmured warnings, and pulled at both of them with invisible fingers. Serenia felt the thread of it wrap around her heart, pulling her closer to him even as she tried to resist. "Kalen," she whispered, voice trembling, "I never wanted this to hurt you. But it seems we are not free of each other. Not really. Not ever." He nodded, his hand finally brushing against hers, the touch light but electric. Shadows twisted around them like dark flames, responding to their emotions, to the bond that refused to break. "Then we face it," he said. "Whatever this is, the curse, the bond, the city itself, we face it together or it will destroy us both." Serenia looked into his eyes and saw not just desire, not just longing, but something deeper, fear and strength, sorrow and love intertwined. She had tried to run, tried to live without him, but she could not. She had never truly been free. And perhaps that was the truth she had to accept. Some bonds were not meant to be severed. Before they could speak further, a distant cry echoed through the streets, a warning carried on the wind. Something was coming. Something dark and relentless, drawn by the stirrings of their emotions and the power between them. The city itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Kalen's eyes narrowed. "Stay close," he whispered, pulling her gently behind him as shadows stretched to shield them. The air crackled with tension, and even the rain seemed to hesitate, falling slowly as if watching the events unfold. For the first time, Serenia felt the true weight of the bond between them. Not just the longing, not just the jealousy, but the undeniable force of fate and magic intertwined. She could not flee, and she did not want to. And yet fear gnawed at her, for she knew the darkness that stirred was patient, and it would not rest until it had tested them fully. Kalen's hand remained on hers, warm and steady, though the tension in the air made both their hearts race. They were two souls bound by more than love, by more than chance. They were bound by something older, something powerful, and something relentless. And as they stood together in the shadowed plaza, the first flicker of dark energy appeared above them, a warning, a promise, and a challenge. The curse had awakened, and there was no turning back. The storm had not passed. Even in the calm of the early night, the city felt restless, as though the streets themselves whispered of what was coming. Shadows moved in corners where no light touched, and the distant bells of the old cathedral tolled with a hollow, mournful sound. Kalen and Serenia walked together through the twisting alleys, their steps in rhythm, their presence bending the shadows around them like a living tide. Kalen's hand remained lightly on her wrist, guiding her through the misted streets. Neither spoke at first, but the silence was heavy with words left unsaid. Each glance, each subtle shift of posture carried the weight of their bond, the longing neither dared fully acknowledge. Finally, Kalen broke the quiet. "The curse is stronger than I imagined," he said, voice low, almost a growl against the hiss of wind. "It feeds on our fear, on our desire, on our inability to let go." Serenia's eyes flicked to his, shadowed by moonlight and mist. "Then it is also dangerous," she said softly, "because it makes us stronger, but stronger in the wrong ways. It pulls us toward each other, but it also exposes us." Kalen tightened his grip slightly, just enough for her to feel the reassurance beneath the tension. "I do not care what it exposes," he said. "It is the truth I cannot ignore. I cannot ignore you, not even for a moment. And you have always been part of me." Her breath caught. Part of her wanted to pull away, to resist the force of their connection, but another part, a deeper, older part, could not. She had tried to live without him, had tried to carve her own path, but every step seemed to lead her back. She looked away briefly, hiding the tremble in her hands, and then whispered, "Then we must learn to face it, together, or it will destroy us." Kalen nodded, and the shadows around them deepened in response, moving like liquid ink through the alleys. The city seemed alive, aware of their emotions, and the air pulsed with power. Every step they took was deliberate, measured, yet the pull of the curse twisted the path beneath their feet, reshaping the familiar streets into something new, something dangerous. They arrived at the ruins of the old marketplace, long abandoned and overgrown with weeds. Broken statues of forgotten merchants and kings leaned against each other as if in mourning. Here, the air felt heavier, charged with history and magic. Kalen stopped, scanning the ruins. "The curse, it is testing us," he said. "It wants to see what we fear, what we hide, and it will not let us ignore each other, not here, not anywhere." Serenia took a step closer to him, her hand brushing against his. "Then we face it," she said, her voice firm though her chest ached with uncertainty. "We face ourselves and each other." Kalen's lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "I have always been ready for the world," he said, "but never for you." The air shifted suddenly, colder, sharper. Shadows deepened around them, twisting and writhing as though alive. Kalen's eyes narrowed, and he moved in front of Serenia, a protective wall against forces they could not yet see. From the darkness, a figure emerged, cloaked and indistinct. It moved with unnatural grace, steps silent against the cracked stone. Kalen tensed, feeling the rush of the curse reacting to the stranger. "Who is there?" he demanded, his voice firm and commanding. The figure paused, the hood falling back to reveal a face pale and ancient, eyes like pools of black ink. "I am a messenger," it said, voice echoing strangely, as if carried from another time. "The bond between you, it calls to the forces that have waited for centuries. You cannot hide, you cannot deny it." Kalen's fingers brushed against the shadows at his side, summoning their protection. "Explain," he demanded. "What do you want from us?" The figure's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. "I do not want," it said. "I exist only to guide, to warn. The curse tests the strength of your hearts, and those who fail vanish." Serenia swallowed hard. Her pulse raced, and for a moment the courage she had held faltered. Kalen noticed, and his hand found hers again, gripping it tightly. The shadows around them seemed to coil, protective yet tense. "You are not alone," he said softly. "Not now, not ever." The figure stepped closer and the shadows pulsed with warning. "The next test is coming," it said. "It will take the shape of your deepest fears. Your bond, your desire, your jealousy. It will force you to see what you cannot face alone." Kalen's jaw tightened. "Then we face it together," he said, determination hardening his voice. "Whatever comes, we do not falter." The figure vanished as silently as it appeared, leaving only a faint ripple in the air. Kalen exhaled slowly, still tense, and looked at Serenia. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. I do," she replied, though uncertainty lingered in her voice. "I always have, even when I should not have." He inclined his head slightly, absorbing her words, though the shadows still flickered around them, restless and alert. "Then hold on to that," he said. "We will need it." They moved deeper into the ruins, each step deliberate, careful. The shadows seemed to guide them, twisting and reshaping the broken stones into paths that led forward. And as they walked, the city around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting, watching, as though aware that this night would mark a turning point. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them. Cracks split the stone and a pale light emerged from below, flickering like liquid silver. Kalen froze, sensing the raw power rising from the earth. The curse, he realized, was testing them already. Serenia's hand tightened on his. "Kalen, what is happening?" "The test has begun," he said, voice low, steady, though tension coiled in his chest. "We must face it together." From the light, shapes emerged, figures twisted and shadowed, mirrors of their own fears. Kalen saw himself, older and weaker, unable to protect what he cherished. He saw Serenia, alone, lost, turning to another in desperation. And then he saw their bond stretched, torn, threatened by the very magic that tied them together. Serenia gasped, her heart hammering. These are not real." "They are as real as our fear," Kalen said, drawing the shadows around them into a protective circle. "And they will vanish only if we face them without turning away." The shadow figures moved closer, circling them, whispering doubts and regrets. Kalen felt the weight of the curse pressing down, pushing him to anger, jealousy, and despair. And yet, as he glanced at Serenia, he felt the pull of something stronger, trust, courage, and the undeniable bond between them. He stepped forward, shadow and power intertwining, and the figures recoiled slightly. "We are not afraid," he said, voice booming with authority and raw emotion. "We do not deny what binds us. Not now, not ever." Serenia drew herself up, courage building. "We face it together," she said firmly. "No matter the fear, no matter the test." The figures wavered, twisting, then slowly dissipated into the air, leaving only the faint glow of silver light. Kalen exhaled, letting the tension drain from his shoulders, and turned to Serenia. "You see," he said, a faint smile breaking through the storm of emotion. "Together we are stronger than the fear itself." She returned the smile, though her eyes were still wide with awe and relief. "I believe you," she said softly. "I have always believed in you, even when I tried not to." For a moment they stood in silence, the storm around them fading, shadows retreating, and the ruins of the marketplace becoming quiet once more. And yet both knew this was only a pause. The curse was patient, and it would not stop here. It would continue to test, to challenge, and to pull them toward truths they might not be ready to face. Kalen's hand brushed against hers again. "Then we move forward," he said, "step by step together. The curse may test us, but it cannot break us if we remain united." Serenia nodded, feeling a warmth she had not expected, the strength of their bond, the reassurance of shared courage, and the quiet promise of protection. They walked through the ruins, side by side, aware that the city beyond awaited with more challenges, more shadows, and more tests of their hearts. And as they stepped back into the streets, the wind carried with it a whisper, soft and insistent. The curse was awake, and it had only just begun. Kalen glanced at Serenia, eyes dark and thoughtful. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we face it, and we survive it, together. Serenia's hand tightened on his. Together, she agreed, her voice steady, her heart beating with trust, fear, and a longing she could no longer deny. The night deepened, shadows stretched, and the city waited, alive with anticipation. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time, they knew they could face whatever the darkness would throw at them. Together, the ruined cathedral loomed ahead, its spires jagged against the silver light of the moon. Rain drizzled softly, washing the city streets and painting the stone in reflective shades of gray. Shadows curled along the edges of the tall walls, stretching like dark fingers across the moss-streaked floor. Kalen and Serenia approached slowly, each step measured, their hearts heavy yet resolute. "The curse, it has led us here," Kalen murmured, his eyes scanning the Gothic arches and shattered stained glass. His coat flapped softly in the wind, and the shadows at his feet seemed to pulse in response to his heartbeat. "This place, it holds power older than the city itself, and it will demand everything we have." Serenia nodded, gripping his hand with quiet determination. "Then we face it," she said. "Whatever comes, we face it together. No more running, no more hiding." Kalen drew a deep breath, feeling the pulse of magic thrumming through the stones beneath them. The cathedral had been abandoned for centuries, left to the elements, yet the air within was thick with ancient energy. They stepped inside cautiously, and the wind followed them, carrying with it whispers of long-lost prayers and lamentations. The shadows seemed to dance along the walls, alive, watching. At the center of the cathedral, a glowing sigil appeared on the floor, etched in silver light that shimmered like liquid. Kalen recognized it instantly, an ancient seal meant to test bonds, to reveal truth, and to challenge the heart. He felt the pull immediately, tugging at both of them, probing their fears and desires. The curse had brought them here to its heart, and there would be no turning back. Serenia's breath caught as she stepped toward the sigil. "It's beautiful, but I can feel its weight, the energy it knows us." "Yes," Kalen said softly, drawing closer. "It knows our fears, our regrets, our longing, and it will challenge us, test the strength of our bond. We must be honest. We must face it fully." The cathedral trembled slightly, and the silver light of the sigil expanded, wrapping around them like a living tide. From the shadows, forms began to emerge, shapes both familiar and strange, reflections of their deepest fears. Kalen saw himself alone, without Serenia, his power meaningless in a world without her presence. He saw Serenia, isolated, vulnerable, turning to another for comfort and companionship. Serenia's eyes widened as her own visions appeared. Kalen consumed by jealousy, anger, and pride, pushing her away, the city swallowing them both, leaving them lost and divided. Her heart ached as she realized how much she had tried to fight what she could not deny, their bond stronger than any choice or distance. Kalen stepped forward, placing his hand over hers. "Whatever these visions show us," he said, voice firm, "we face it together. No running. No turning away." Her fingers tightened around his. "Together," she whispered, "always." The shadows reacted instantly, twisting and recoiling, drawn to their determination. The cathedral itself seemed to pulse, testing the truth of their words, probing the honesty of their hearts. The forms of their fears advanced, swirling like storm clouds, whispering doubts and regrets. "You are not enough for her," a shadow hissed in Kalen's ear. "She will leave, she always leaves." "And you are powerless," a voice whispered to Serenia. "He will never change, you will always be alone." Kalen drew the shadows around them, forming a protective barrier, his eyes blazing with resolve. "Lies," he said, "all lies. We are not alone, we are bound, and nothing, no fear, no curse, no shadow can change that." Serenia inhaled sharply, drawing the courage he offered into herself. "We do not deny each other," she said. "We face the truth, no matter how frightening it is. And we survive it together." The shadows hesitated, twisting, then recoiling slightly. The silver light of the sigil pulsed faster, brighter, as if acknowledging the strength of their resolve. Kaelin's hand rested on her heart for a brief moment, feeling the rapid beat of life, courage, and determination. Their bond was no longer silent or hidden. It was alive, radiant, and undeniable. Then the cathedral trembled again. The shadows condensed into a towering figure, dark and fluid, with eyes like molten silver. It spoke without moving its lips. You have faced the fears, but the true test is not of courage or strength. It is of trust. Can you forgive what was lost? Can you release the burdens that weigh on your hearts? Kaelin exchanged a glance with Serenia. Both felt the weight of past regrets, the divorce, the misunderstandings, the unspoken words that had haunted them. Kaelin stepped forward. "I forgive myself for my pride," he said, voice steady. "And I forgive you for the distance you needed. I understand now that our bond, our connection, it cannot be broken by fear or mistake." Serenia nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. "And I forgive myself for trying to walk alone. I forgive you for the anger and jealousy that came from fear. We have learned and we are stronger for it." The shadows shifted again, swirling around them, and the tall figure dissipated, its silver eyes fading into the night. The sigil's glow softened, no longer pulsing violently but resting in steady light, a reflection of the balance and trust that now existed between them. Kaelin exhaled slowly, his hand still in hers. "The curse has tested us," he said softly. "But it cannot break what we have, not now, not ever." Serenia smiled, relief mingling with wonder. "Then it is bound," she said, "bound by our trust, our love, and our courage." The cathedral doors slammed softly behind them, and the wind carried with it a whisper of acknowledgement, as if the city itself recognized the resolution. They had faced the trials, confronted their deepest fears, and emerged united. And yet both knew that the world outside remained unpredictable, filled with shadows, power struggles, and hidden dangers. But in that moment the bond between them was unshakable, their hearts aligned in purpose and understanding. Kaelin lowered his head toward Serenia, his voice gentle. "I have been a master of shadows, a ruler of fear and power, but with you I am simply myself. No titles, no curses, no darkness, just us." Serenia's hand rose to his cheek, fingers brushing softly against the warmth of his skin. "And I am simply myself with you," she whispered. "No pretenses, no fear, just us." For a long moment they stood in silence, the cathedral around them bathed in the soft glow of the sigil, shadows stretching and retreating in rhythm with their hearts. The storm outside had softened to a gentle rain, and the night seemed calm, reflective, almost sacred. Kaelin finally spoke, voice low but resolute. "Whatever comes next in this city, in our lives, we face it together. I cannot promise it will be easy, but I can promise this: I will not leave. Not now, not ever." Serenia's eyes glimmered with unshed tears, a mixture of relief, hope, and love. "And I will not turn away," she said softly. "We are bound by choice, by trust, by what we cannot deny." They stepped out of the cathedral together, hands intertwined, their steps echoing through the silent streets. The city itself seemed to sigh, a quiet acknowledgement that two hearts had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. Shadows lingered, yes, but they no longer threatened, at least, not while the bond between Kaelin and Serenia remained true. As the first light of dawn broke over the city, the towers catching the soft glow of early sun, Kaelin and Serenia paused on a hill overlooking the streets below. Rainwater reflected the pale light, and the city stretched endlessly, a place of danger, magic, and power. Kaelin looked at Serenia, his eyes full of quiet determination. "This city will never change," he said. "It will always be a place of shadows and secrets, but now we are ready. Together we can face whatever comes. We are no longer bound by fear, only by choice, by trust, and by love." Serenia leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his presence. "Then we move forward," she said. "No looking back, no regrets, only us together." The city below stirred with life. unaware of the ancient bond that had been tested and solidified in the ruins of the cathedral. The curse had been faced, fear had been conquered, and hearts had been united. And though shadows would always linger, the strength of their love and trust would shine like a beacon in the darkness. Kaelin kissed her forehead gently, a silent vow that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. Serenia smiled, feeling a peace she had never known, a certainty she had longed for through years of fear and separation. The sun rose higher, spilling golden light over stone and shadow. And together, Kaelin and Serenia walked forward hand in hand, their hearts bound not by fear, but by choice, courage, and love that would endure through any darkness.